Good morning, everyone. Shirley here. Today we're going to take a look at Tindral Sageswift on Mythic. I figured I would do things slightly differently today. Instead of recording this in real time for the callouts, there's a lot of little details in this fight, so I figured I would pause this one and or play it and then pause it periodically and point out various things along the way. So before we jump into the poll here, I'm playing a standard single-target arms build outside of a couple of talents, being Warbreaker, Thunderous Words to help reduce the cooldown on Thunderous Roar, as well as Wrecking Throw for this boss. And before we start, if my mic quality's a little bit off, I apologize. There was some software issues going on with this, but I should have that all sorted for the next one. So, jumping in on the poll here, we are just going to be using Warbreaker and saving our Avatar and Thunderous Roar for a little bit later on in the fight. I am using the Gnarl Root Trinket, the branch. I wouldn't really recommend it, but it's the best thing I got at the moment. So, we're going to use it as well on the poll with our Warbreaker, get a little bit extra crit chance off that trinket. It does slow you, so it's kind of annoying, but yeah, we're just using it on the poll to get as many uses out of it as possible. He's going to cast his first mechanic here. I'm going to pause it, being the Fire Beam, and then we're going to leap across it to help set us up for the next part. He's going to immediately cast Falling Star, and I'm going to be throwing up my Spell Reflect for pretty much every single one of these that I can to help mitigate the magic damage of the cast itself, as well as any of the swirlies that he might be landing around us, and eyeballing our positioning here and watching out for these fire beams coming in, because occasionally these fire beams can come right through the melee, and it can be pretty rough there during his owl form cast. So we're going to pause here for the first set of roots that go out. We have Dragon Riders going up, of course. I'm not part of the first set. If you do have a sudden death proc with our new tier set that comes out right before these roots, I would hang on to it for when the roots come down, because that Thunderclap can hit pretty hard. It's going to be your best AoE on these anyway in this current build. I am not using my Sweeping Strikes on this very first set of roots because we have dragons coming down. They're not going to live very long, and I want the full duration for the next set, so that's what I'm holding it onto it for. I'm going to be using my Combat Potion right before these roots go out, though, not on the pole, and that's so the potion will overlap with the next set of roots still during that 30-second window. So we're going to go ahead and use our Warbreaker into a big whirlwind and then Thunderclap to get up, rend on as many of these as possible and help cleave them all down, but they all die extremely fast. That's why we're not using our Sweeping Strikes right there. I am going to wait and bait the Fire Beam here. Now, we do get a sudden death proc right after that. I'm holding on to it, and that's for the second set of roots right here. This is where we're going to use our Sweeping Strikes, and then as soon as these vines go out, I'm going to be using my Avatar and Thunderous Roar into our sudden death proc, and get as much damage out as we can into a Whirlwind, Thunderclap, and then burning our Warbreaker there and help deal with all those adds. I did burn Parry here just in case, there's a lot of stuff on the ground right there. It's easy to get caught out by swirls. I'm going to move out to the second set of feathers here, as this is where I'm going up. I want to be on this feather spawn immediately when it lands, rather than run into it late, because if you want to do any sort of damage with these things, you need to be moving immediately. And speaking of which, we're going to go up twice with the flight, and then dive back down to get down to the ground as fast as possible. Our raid's going to gate out here, but I'm going to sit on the boss to get a little bit extra damage rolling out here. And we're going to drop this last tree ants here, dodging these beams, and go into our first flying intermission phase here. 350k, the damage was okay this pull for me. It could have been a lot better, but we're going to fly down to our first set, using one of our second wind charges just to keep up at least one vigor, just in case you run into one of these fire orbs. Especially if there's people flying like right in front of you. It could be a little bit challenging to see where you're going sometimes. We're going to fly up to the left here and grab this one. And keep moving up. Landing on the platform, charging in, and immediately burning our Warbreaker with Thunderous Roar here. We want to burn off the shield as fast as possible using up our sudden death procs and our Wrecking Throw during this shield phase. You want to make sure that you have that rolling. Ideally, you would have it in that first 4-second window when Recklessness is up and pray that it crits to get any real value out of it. But we're going to move the boss over here after the shield is broken and our cooldowns come up here, but we're going to hang on to our Warbreaker and just burn my trinket here just to keep it rolling. He's going to, he's going to immediately do his owl form here, and I got a sudden death proc on the back there. I should have held on to that. It's getting pretty late at the night. I was getting a little tired when we actually killed this. But whenever he does his owl form, he's going to be doing his root cast a few seconds later. So you don't want to be using your whirlwind. You want it to be off cooldown, as well as if you get a sudden death proc, like right before he does this, or right when he does this, I would hang on to it to get that big juicy thunderclap on all the roots, because it can crit for, 250k with the new tier set buffs. So anyway, we're going to all stack up here in between all these mushrooms. I'm going to pop my sweeping strikes pretty much every time now. We're going to Avatar, immediately Warbreaker into a big whirlwind, thunderclap, and then dreadnought lines off of our overpowers and help cleave all these down. Spreading out to deal with all of these seeds, and then we're getting back up around the boss here, out of the way of the dispels. I should be behind him right here because he can parry still. Throwing up a reflect to deal with this falling star damage. Saving our next Warbreaker, spreading out here, just making sure all these seeds are down, and then charging back in for our next set of roots. And this one I'm going to burn parry on again because it does get pretty dicey, because people are spread out for the seeds. Everybody has a tendency to clump in really fast, and the overlaps can get a little bit sloppy. And there's a burst of damage going out right after this, so I recommend burning parry here. We're going to burn our sweeping strikes as we charge back in, and as soon as everything spawns, we're going to throw up our Warbreaker into another Thunderous Roar because it's back up, and it's going to realign our CDs with Avatar. And luckily this time we do have a sudden death proc, so we can go ahead and immediately hit that and get a nice fat thunderclap on everything into our Whirlwind, help cleave in everything back down again, voiding these mushrooms and the dispel circles. And he's going to go owl form again, and this is where my set of feathers goes up in this phase. I'm going to immediately be there as soon as it lands and fly up. And one thing I want to point out on these bombs when you're grabbing these, if you want to be like the most efficient way possible that when you're doing this, is we're flying up twice, and I'm going to be hugging the left side of the bomb, either side that you're more comfortable with turning. That way your turn radius as you come through it back around can be tighter, so you can get back down on the ground faster to do more damage on the roots with it. And we're going to burn that down, slamming everything, help cleave all these down. Immediately looking out for the seeds, I'm going to burn my rally cry here to help mitigate some of that damage for the raid. I am going to use my Warbreaker right here, and depending on timings and how much rage you can spend, you might hang on to that, but it's a little bit of extra damage during the flight phase here just to help buff the dots, ever so slightly. You do want it back up again for this next shield coming up, but if it's off by 2 or 3 seconds, it's not the end of the world. So that's what I'm doing here. We're flying to the next platform, trying to be careful and avoid all the fire orbs. Flying up. And as we get into the last phase here, I'm going to charge in and immediately throw Avatar and Thunderous Roar and our Warbreaker, all of our cooldowns here, and that's to help set up, well, for one, the shield needs to get broken, but it's going to help realign our cooldowns for the rest of the final phase. It's going to help deal with all the bad overlaps for the root sets, so we're not hanging on to it for this first root set. We want to burn everything here. However, when he does this Falling Star cast, you could use Reflect here or during the shield. But we do want to spend as much rage possible right after that shield, just so we have Warbreaker back up for this root set, because this one can get a little bit dicey if you don't have the damage to break all these before the Fire Beam. So luckily we get it reset in time. We hit Execute phase here. You get a sudden death proc. Just going to obliterate all these ads, and then we're going to move to the edge here, and I'm making sure I'm not crossing this line here around this front, just so we don't take the fire debuff from being on the edge of the room. So it's a really narrow window to get all those. Then we're going to move back in a little bit, soak all these seeds, and continue executing the boss. And I know that at this point there's not much going on for about 30 seconds, so we're going to immediately send our Warbreaker again during execute phase to help cycle it, get that big test of might buff, as well as stack up our Juggernaut stacks during this window, to just keep up as much damage as possible. Basically, I just want to say that you have time to actually use your Warbreaker here. It will be back up for the next seed set, so you can rotate it. He'll do his owl form. This is where my feather set is on this pull. So we're going to fly up and hug the left side of this and arc back in, spin down, drop on this, immediately throw a big whirlwind, and then into our execute because I don't want my Juggernaut stacks to be falling off. We are saving our Warbreaker right there, even though if it might be tempting to clip, you know, the tail end of those for this set. This set is can be a problem set depending on your comp and damage. This is where I'm going to be using my second potion because it's during execute phase, so we get 30 seconds of uptime for it, as well as all my cooldowns come back up here, so we're going to use everything for this root set, and, you know, just be sure to blast all this down, and trying to make sure that the dispel targets are as safe as possible. Our raid's going to gate out here. Since I broke my root with Avatar, I'm just going to sit on the boss and continue to execute, do damage. And we're going to Spell Reflect for that Falling Star cast there, and avoiding all these beams. He's going to pop out his next set of feathers here, and we're going to stack up for our next set of seeds. We have Warbreaker backup for it, so, you know, obviously going to be using that into a whirlwind just to help cleave down everything as evenly as possible as we can. We're going to move out and help soak all these seed set. That one right there is probably the most dangerous seed soak, because if you don't break out all the roots fast enough, you won't be able to soak all the seeds, so you definitely want to make sure that you have Warbreaker up for that set there. Our Dispel targets are going to move out, and we're going to passively just cleave down these last couple of tree ents. I'm in full execute mode, so, you know, we're just going to hopefully reset our Warbreaker fast enough to help deal with these, but we get all of them down before the fire beam comes out as we continue to execute the boss for our last movement here. And throw up one last Thunderous Roar, and down goes Mythic Tindral Sageswift. If we hadn't have killed him right there, this feather set right here, I'd have grabbed this one out on the side here and then flown to the other end of the platform to help do that last bomb mechanic in case more people are dead or whatever. But otherwise, that's roughly where the boss is going to die at current gear levels. If you guys have any questions, feel free to leave them down below. Thanks for watching. Maybe I'll do, you know, this pause breakdown thing a bit more in the future. We'll see. Let me know if you'd like that. But anyway, I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.